Hello everyone, my name is Tine Mansfield and this is Sidsel Thevik. We're talking to you today from Denmark, Ringsted, and we're having this conversation in English, as many people has asked us to tell us a little bit about the wisdom that we both contain and that we could share with more people than just the Scandinavian people. Today we're going to talk about this book, and it's called Cancer is Wisdom, and there's also an English version of this. This book is written by Sidsel, and it's all about how Sidsel got the diagnosis breast cancer and how she chose to approach the whole subject and to heal herself, which you can't even say, but I'll let Sidsel take that away. So you got diagnosed with a huge tumor in your right breast that had spread to the lymph node in your arm. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's
When
correct. When I, during a phone conversation with my friend, the 13th, December 13, 2013, I was led by what I experienced like a kind of divine hand or some helping divine help, that I was led, my left hand was kind of be letting down to my right breast, and immediately I felt this huge tumor like jumping out in my hand, in my left hand. And suddenly I knew that also this is my my subject to be experienced in this incarnation through the persona Sidsel. And at the same time I was in deep calmness. I felt a deep calmness, and I was in so much faith and inner peace. And at the same time I knew that I had to take care of it. I just couldn't deny that I was carrying this what I considered was an expression of some life lessons that I've been chosen on a soul level, related to emotional patterns.
so that you yourself had chosen, or somebody had chosen for you?
On a soul level, well, then I had to explain that I experience the essence of me being divine energy, a conscious energy, carried in the light of soul as soul light, incarnating through in this incarnation through the persona Sidsel. So and before I incarnated down in this lifetime, I chose on the soul level to work with certain life lessons in an emotional way. And related to that, I knew that the tumor in my right breast was an expression of these life lessons of emotional patterns.
So that when you realize they're there, they express through the tumor, so they have in effect some wisdom for you to rediscover whilst you're having this experience as Sidsel.
Yeah, and at the same time, because right after I discovered the tumor, I was led to Google breast cancer as healing instead of healing of breast cancer, which would be natural to search, use as search words. I used the term breast cancer as healing, And suddenly I was led to this link with the research of Dr. Rüge Gerd Hamer, German New Medicine. And this research totally mirrored and facilitated my view of what we call, in a conventional term called disease. And that actually what we consider as disease is the right opposite, is health. And the research of Rüge Gerd Hamer shows that in each and every expression and change in our body, what we call disease, we always can relate it to some kind of emotional conflict, shock. And if that is not being resolved immediately and related to what kind of emotional experience, what topic, emotional topic you're experiencing, then you go into a conflict phase. And in certain areas of the body, it will be shown as self delusion, or a self purification. And if you on a conscious or unconscious level get a sort of a solution, then you go into the healing phase. And the research of Dr. Rüge Gerd Hamer shows that in more than 85% of what we call disease, we are already in the healing phase. And diving into this research, it totally mirrored that the tumor in my right breast was related to the topic of separation, which I had experienced early on the same year in my relation to my partner. And that when we did together made a decision about splitting up in the love for and to each other, then I went into the healing phase. And the previous self delusion had turned into self purification. So the growth actually was an expression of healing, the process of healing. Yeah. And I knew that this was not only related to my personal sphere as Sidsel, but it was also related to some kind of bridge building. And the opgave, assignment, yeah, to walk the talk in faith, in the essence of faith and non-judgment. Also, when I said yes to go through the whole packet of examination, mammography, ultrasound, biopsy, x-rays of the lungs and blood tests. Actually, I had made a decision immediately that I didn't need any kind of help from the conventional system. And at the same time, I was led by my intuition, my inner voice that told me I had to contact a clairvoyant that I had been crossing paths with early on. And she told me that what I already knew at that point, that doctors are also divine. And when she mirrored that energy in me, I knew that this was much more about building bridge between the many worlds and realities. So And that was what I brought with me when I then sat down with the surgeon and an a nurse and a student in medical. And my boyfriend as well. And was told that this was a malignant breast tumor in invasive growth, and it was aggressive and had spread to the lymph nodes in my right armpit. And that they already had made an appointment so I could get an operation and x-ray and chemo treatment as well. And they wanted to remove all my lymph nodes in the right armpit. Already 12 days after I got the diagnosis. And
So they thought it was urgent.
yeah. And she told that I would die if I didn't choose their regime.
Okay.
And well, I listened, and I honored her perspective on it, and at the same time I didn't nurture the fear in the others being present in the room when I said that thank you, but I'm choosing another path. And they were quite shocked about my way of relate to the diagnose and my way of just being in that state of calmness and peace, inner peace and faith. And she asked me if I could wish anything, what would it be? And I said that would be a cooperation by following my way.
Yep.
And at that point, the door would be closed because I didn't choose their treatment. And at the same time, I knew that if I could make just going on, reaching my hand out to nurture some kind of bridge building, it would be for not just for my own position, but for mostly for facilitating the whole movement of the authentic force of healing in us, and actually getting into the light what so-called disease actually are.
All right, and Sidsel, so then you were told that the door was closed if you did not want to, well, follow this sort of hospital regime for cancer. So what was your next move?
I hold the door open by making an appointment to make a phone call the next Monday. This was on Thursday, and the Monday after, I was supposed to make a phone call to tell them if I still not wanted an operation. They knew at that time, they did know that I wouldn't go through radiation or chemo.
Yeah.
And I did that. I made that phone call and told the secretary that I still didn't want an operation. And she was very surprised and went into kind of state of fear. And she asked me, do you know what you're into? And I said, yes. I know what this is. And I know I had to, I'm the captain on my own ship. and I don't need any operation. So, and then she said, well, what would you say to let us follow your way, make that kind of cooperation? And I was happy.
Yeah,
I
sure.
said, yes, thanks. That was what I asked for or invited to in the first place. So the 20th of January 2014, I sat down with the surgeon, and she then opened her heart and her ears as well, and she listened to the research of Harmer, my explanation, and how I relate to the state of cancer.
Yep.
And from then on, there has been this beautiful cooperation between the hospital and me. And already in the end of March the same year, the 2.5 centimeter large tumor has disappeared, and then the cell growth in the lymph node started to expand, and actually, as I discovered and I recalled as what I then called wisdom, is that as the tumor in the milk duct is related to a topic of separation, emotional topic of separation,
Yep.
then the lymph node is related to the topic of devaluation in myself. When going into too many compromises in unwillingness, and so what we called metastasis. Metastasis?
Yeah, I think it's in English. It's called metastasis.
Yeah, it's not actually metastasis. It's not spreading. It's other topics that are brought into or out into enlightenment.
Yep.
And are triggered.
Sure.
Very often in a so-called situation when you get diagnosed or at death sentence, as I did, other aspects of inner child emotional patterns are triggered. So so the biological expression acts with these changes in the body that is directly an expression of conscious energy that you have chosen to work with on a soul level during the specific incarnation. And what I did was I just took care of my inner child aspects. I worked with them. I was very conscious about in awareness in the daily life, what it was related to, and worked with my emotional energy. So I integrated this instead of being reactions as inner child aspects or shadow sides, what we often call shadow sides, integrated as that wisdom it is, of knowledge you gain through your own the lived lives, not only in this incarnation but many parallel lives. I also relate to and recall what you could relate to as previous experiences, but actually this is in synchronicity outside time and space. And so I worked with these emotional patterns of ego aspects and then integrated as wisdom and then act from my I, my adult center of being an adult, and at the same time I nourished my life force, because as I experience it, it's not the directly the expression, the changes or development in the biology that we die of. It's more the drained life force that in the natural way is very important to nurture it, because that's what makes the biology possible to actually let the energy of soul, the soul energy, incarnate and experience through the body, through the so-called physical body that is not actually physical at all, but yeah. So I worked on different levels, and I knew that it was health. It is expressions coming to remind us what I came here for.
Yeah.
Also, what I came here for. I also came here for nurturing the joy and happiness and state of bliss and the essence of faith. And at the same time, I also came here to explore and expand the universe I am through these experiences of emotional patterns. So yeah, and they were quite surprised at the hospital, because this was a state that I would die in and from if not removed by the conventional treatment.
And you're still here in
I'm still here,
2017.
yeah, I'm still here, and keeping on diving deeper and deeper into the research of Dr. Rüdiger Hammer. And that journey also led me into actually why so many people chooses to excarnate or make the transition when going through chemo and operation and radiation. And I discovered that going into the communication that Hammer had, he died the 2nd of July this year, so
Yes.
he's not here on Earth in the persona. But the research he did was tremendous, because he had this very detailed communication that documents how different aspects of the society chooses to recommend chemo and operation and radiation to the rest of the world with a what can I say, a death rate about the 97, which quite high.
Quite.
At the same time,
using
and at the same time recommend the research of Dr. Hammer by their own group, to members of their own group, with a so-called survival rate on the same 97%, and that's quite remarkable. And also the way that what was the starting point when Hammer started to make this research that was actually related to this the death of his son that was shot by accident by the Prince of Savoy. And and going into the documents, this whole circus where Hammer was hunted and tried to get poisoned and shot on, and he was arrested and put into jail, and his research was removed from the public. And putting the dot together, it's not very difficult to make your own result of why that happened.
Yeah, sure.
And a lot of people that I have been taking through my hands as a multidimensional mentor, when facilitated in the authentic force and they being able to heal by themselves, actually with the own essence of many kind of consciousness. It's remarkable how the life force is nurtured, and how these changes of in the biology is very it's very significant when it happens. And I'm not putting any judgment into which way you choose to walk, because no one can know the truth, the inner truth in another. And at the same time, I'm here to facilitate the essence of faith, whatever you choose, even choosing chemo and operation and radiation. But nurturing and facilitate the essence of faith in another person seeking my help. Often is the small difference that makes the big difference in another. Yeah, being the captain on your own ship, pulling back or putting back the sovereign energy that you are, actually.
Yeah, self-empower them so they're not victim.
Yeah. No one is victim, even though it can be experienced very a challenge.
For sure.
Whatever you have been through in your childhood, because what also Hammer the research of Hammer shows that everything is related to the years of child in your childhood, as well as what I consider is related to parallel lives, but he calls it the divine. The fifth law of the five laws that he discovers, where the first laws are very much related to the biology. Then the fifth law is much more related to how this is a science that is not, you can't put it into the used term of so-called science, because it's much more about an energy. He relates to the divine. The Disease of the Soul was the title of his first book.
The disease?
The Disease of the Soul, or the Psyche. And the Psyche is, when you put it into Latin, then it's a synonym of soul. So I'll say that diving deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole recalls and putting so much light onto what really happens behind the curtains, even into the area of alternative complementary areas, because these aspects of having the agenda to depopulate and debunk or in the best term, deny the reactivation of the soul DNA in humanity. Are so much. It's so clear when I observe it from outside as well as from inside. It's so clear how the puzzle is totally. It's not even easy to explain in human terms, because there's so many aspects of it, and so many different kind of energies and nuances. So yeah, it has to be experienced, but actually I'm not the only one experiencing it. So
Of course not.
yeah,
We all are.
yeah.
Whatever.
Maybe I'm just one of the few putting it into words,
I think
speaking out loud, and writing as well about this topic. Yeah,
for sure. And it is, I do think it is a process, because we're so encoded with that cancer is a death sentence. Cancer is bad, and if you find a lump, you just want to get rid of it as quickly as possible, and then you kill off the rest or whatever might be there with chemotherapy or radiation therapy. But the thing is to actually look at the actual growth as the wisdom that's there to talk to you and work with you about the traumas that are clearly in your life and that needs to be resolved. Because we know within the therapy that the body, the nervous system, you keep sort of going back to the same traumas, where you can easily look at it from the perspective of, oh my God, it's happening again, it's always happening for me, I'm such a victim, so unlucky. Whereas actually part of you is trying to resolve the issue by keep creating the same situation. There might be different names or different streets or people involved, but it's in effect it makes you feel exactly the same way, and it is healing. It's not because you've done something bad and now you're going to be punished. It's because part of you is trying to go back to that trauma to actually heal it, and it is in effect the same with cancer. So in effect you're also talking about the whole psychosomatic way of looking at things, where some people would say, oh yeah, but I got hit by a car, so I broke my leg. How can that be wisdom? How can that be anything to do with me? I was walking down the street, this car drove into me, so I broke my leg. How can I learn anything from that other than I shouldn't be walking in the street?
Yeah, and and that's understandable, but put into the light or seen from the perspective that everything that happens for a reason, and there's no coincidence. You are attracting what you're sending out in oprigtighed,
In
sincerity.
yeah.
In sincerity, because you can put a lot of thoughts and energy frequencies out, but if it's not in sincerity, it still will be the frequency sent out in sincerity that is manifesting what you to be experienced,
Which is actually the feeling you have.
Yeah. And as well as I experience it, there is no cures. Nothing can cure the essence of a cancer state. We can remove and try to inhibit the expression, the physical or the biology, the expression of the biology, but the essence will still remain in you, and that's why so many experience that when after an operation, and actually you have been diagnosed that you are okay, you're well, you're healthy now.
Yeah, or in remission or
Yeah,
something like that.
they
Yeah.
often experience that the tumor returns, or getting another experience of expressions some other place in the body that is still related to the same topic.
Exactly.
Because the soul will always try to remind you of what it came here. When I say you, the persona, through the persona, what you came here to grow through, on a conscious level, in the seeing from the higher perspective, in the reawakening of the humanity.
Yeah.
So cancer is actually a world language, worldwide language of expression. And yes, you can remove, and you can inhibit by sound, by natural treatment, by different kind of treatments in the alternative and complementary areas. But still, you don't remove the essence of life's lessons.
Yeah.
And that's a totally another view of putting and seeing and experience so-called diseases on, because the word dis-ease, even the word dis-ease, that for many is related to, it's just not ease, it's the opposite, but the word is created to put humanity into confusion, because actually what we call disease is ease. It is ease, but it's how we relate to it, how we behave when we meet these expressions and changes in the body and in the mind as well. And of course, not when it's not when it comes to poison, because poison is
Different.
yeah, it's different.
Yeah.
Any kind of poison. But what we normally relate to diseases is actually ease. Yeah, when diving quite down deep the rabbit hole. Yeah,
For sure. There's constantly new levels.
yeah, yeah, and it's part of the evolution.
Yes.
The spiritual evolution of humanity.
And I've actually,
Yeah.
what I found is that the deeper you go down, the more you open up
Yeah,
to the level of what you actually are. It's almost like every time you dive down and you look at something painful within yourself and how that maybe relates to some knowledge you also get in the world, you also seem to download a higher part of yourself, or and upload more DNA within yourself. It's also every time it's like a process
Yeah.
that starts, and sometimes it's ongoing and they sort of cross each other, and you just think, oh my god,
yeah,
I just want 5 minutes space.
yeah,
But that ain't happening
yeah.
ever.
Because yeah, and at the same time, when I started on this journey, or continued the journey I already was into, I've also been meeting aspects of the energies that don't want this to be put
Oh god,
into
yeah,
the
yeah,
public.
yeah, for sure.
And as well as I've been facilitated from by frequencies of high dimensional energy that is my different kind of family souls out there. So the whole universe that I'm not only reflecting or I'm mirrored by or are a part of, but I am the universe or the multiverse as any other creature or being. Is working. It's a huge cooperation on the multiverse level. Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah.
I was actually thinking about, Sister, could you talk a little bit about the pain body, the ego and the pain body
Yeah,
in relation to all of this?
yeah,
Because I think it's
yeah,
essential.
yeah, yeah. During my journey, I sometimes I'm leading myself into a state of so-called pain, especially when the healing is really pushing on, because symptoms of as edema and headache and fever and tiredness as well is that's healing symptoms, and it can be experienced painful, but actually the body itself can't feel pain. It's more the interaction between the astral body and the ether body. The astral body carrying our thoughts and emotions, interacting with the ether body. That is a kind of a bank of remembering.
Yeah.
And the ether body is so close. It's not. It's not because it's not existing side by side. It's very integrated in each other's the energy levels, but to the understanding, then the ether body is very close to the physical in the frequencies. When we relate to the energy frequencies, so the ether body is acting through the biology, so it can be experienced like it's the body that feels the pain, but actually it's all about, everything is about emotions. So how do we relate, how do we behave in a state where we do experience it like pain? What I do is that I welcome it. I know that this is not an this is not the body. This is my own creation of feelings to be experienced, and putting it into that light, and welcome it without dyrke, without nurturing the pain body, actually. Just welcome it and take care of it, and relate to it in from another perspective. Sometimes it can be a help for me. It could be a help to a kind of withdrawn from it, to put myself into the eye of the organ and just observe what's going on outside. Is enough. Is enough, and the pain disappears. Yeah, because then I'm serving as conscious being, as the consciousness, and not putting the focus in the state
I
of
totally
pain.
understand, because it's
Yeah.
very like what I do with people in therapy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and it's very effective.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that is not to say that it's not okay to feel pain or to experience pain, but it's at the same time, it's we are our own creators.
Yep.
And also when it comes to so-called pain, yeah,
For sure.
yeah. And I've been there in
For
different
sure.
situations, so I know
Yeah,
what
yeah.
I'm talking about.
But that is also a process, because
Yeah,
within itself also has a wisdom.
yeah,
And sometimes you cannot avoid diving into and nurturing the pain. But then you also get very important information
yeah,
about yourself, your traumas, and how to move
yeah,
on from there. And
yeah,
actually, because if we think about it, if because you and me, we've worked with ourselves for many, many years, and obviously this is not the experience you will have if you just started sort of doing work on yourself. But as you sort of, at first you think, okay, I'm going to endure this pain, or however you look at it, and then it'll be done with. But then you realize it comes back. But after a while, or after years, you actually start to understand that it's not quite the same way it comes back. It doesn't sort of knock you flat on your back every time. You become actually more and more composed, and more able to contain the pain, and actually focusing more on the wisdom within it rather than actually the pain. And it's just sort of tips as you work with it, but
yeah,
it's a process, and it takes a while. So for maybe for you and me, it's easy, but for people who are new in this, it is actually, it can be quite overwhelming. I think maybe they can just take away the knowledge that it is actually helpful to work with it, and it does change, but it doesn't mean it doesn't come back. It's just because we take other frequencies within the sort of same area, and in a way, I don't know if we transform it or we come to terms with it, however what you want to use, but actually it's a new aspect of it. And also what I experience, particularly in this life where there's such an awakening of human beings, it also seems like we are taking the same essence in, whether you call it previous lives or future lives or parallel lives. It seems as if you have a particular emotion, you take all the loads from all the other lives with you this time and transform that particular vibration,
yeah,
which is also a huge amount to deal
yeah.
with.
At least you do have the possibility to do it. So and there's so many aspects to it, and yeah, it's quite it's so incredible to experience this view that is actually 180 degrees from a conventional view.
Absolutely. And it
Yeah,
takes a little while getting used to, because it's so almost like everything is topsy-turvy, and you think,
yeah,
what?
yeah,
How can that be?
yeah,
And my experience is that people's got to take it a little bite at a time.
yeah,
Some
yeah.
takes bigger
Of
bites,
course,
because
yeah,
it's like suddenly you're just sort of there, and it makes sense, and you cannot go back to
no,
thinking things in a different way. Some people will call that brainwashing, but I don't actually think it is. I think it's just really, it resonates with the essence of who we are. But yeah, it's a fantastic way of experiencing things, and there's no rules or regulations.
no,
It's just, just dive in and experience.
yeah, yeah, and each and every one is carrying their own inner truth, and what is the most important is that being the captain on your own ship and being in charge of what to do and what not to do, and whatever you choose, do it in the state of faith. So because every time you act from fear. You act in a kind of restriction and in the sympathetic. I'm not saying that you don't have to jump into the walk path when being out on the road where cars are driving by, but be aware of what's the energy leading me now. Yeah. 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 And who is the one living the life I experience? Is it my own, from my own heart and soul, or is it from or by the convictions of other, including the programming that we as humanity have been letting ourselves, putting ourselves into through the structures of religion and political structures and financial, educational, cultural.
Yeah, for sure. We
and that we now are in different kind, in different ways, are
well, we're in
kind of going
Sorry.
out from now. Yeah.
Well, we are I think I look at it as if investigating, sort of from afresh. Who am I with this? This is what I've been told that I had to do, or how it was. Does that feel right? And if it doesn't feel right, what does feel right? What is the truth then? Or what is the truth to me?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because there's as many truths, as we know, as there's people. And it's the same with, now we've talked about cancer and how to go from there. There is nothing written in stone. That is just going within yourself and having the faith to trust your own intuition. And yes, you can facilitate some support, but you can't actually, in a way, lead that person. The leadership's got to come within, and that within itself is a big paradigm shift, because we, the sheeple, we're used to following the leader. We're used to following everything we've been taught. It has to be this way, you can't do this, you can do that. And now you've got to go within and ask yourself the question on everything.
Yeah.
How do I feel about that? And I think, just to say something, quite often you come to the, I don't know yet. But I'm sure I'll find out slowly.
Yeah.
When I get there.
Yeah.
A little bit more of the truth of who am I within my own experience of myself in relation to the universe and all my relations. And, it's huge.
Yeah.
It's just huge travel. It's a huge journey that we're undertaking in this life. And it's fantastic.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's horrible.
It can be experienced that way.
Yes. So, when it is experienced horrible, it definitely is horrible, because you're so sort of within the reptile part of you. And it just is that way until you sort of, you can look up the rabbit hole again and think, oh, okay, sun's shining.
Yeah.
This might be a cool day.
Yeah. And even the reptile energy also carries, they do experience or exist reptile energy that wants to get into.
Oh, I know the people that have learned to turn on the empathy. It's fabulous. Yes, but it is growth.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it doesn't come natural to everybody, but you can learn
Yeah.
if you want to.
Yeah.